Hello, just putting in a quick update at the beginning of the video because we filmed this on a Monday night and we filmed it because we've been enjoying Encyclopedia and the publisher, Holy Grail Games, went bankrupt and they announced this Tuesday morning. So I don't really know the availability of the game in future. I think there's some retail copies available, but will it be published again? Will it be forgotten? So just thought you should probably know in case you were interested in picking up. And yeah, the situation's not good. We were unaware of these issues, but apparently they had a lot of Kickstarter campaigns that they weren't able to fill before they went bankrupt. So a lot of people won't get their games. Yeah, we just backed it, got it, honestly, like 6 months later. We thought it was pretty good, but yeah, we just weren't aware. So just keep that in mind for the rest of the review. Hey, I'm Farrell. This is Tally.
Hello.
We're bored of it, and today we're going to review Encyclopedia. Again, we played once and we're like, eh. And then several months later, played a few more times and we're like, actually. So what we're saying is, if you haven't heard of Encyclopedia, then give this review a chance because it might be for you. Although it's maybe not as clean cut as we think it is, because I saw the Dice Tower review last night and they were a lot more divided on their opinion of the game than we are, I think.
Yeah, spoiler. The plot of Encyclopedia sees you as the player get hired by the Comte de Buffon to help him create the world's first encyclopedia of natural history. This will see 1 to 4 players trotting around the globe and studying animals in an attempt to be the biggest contributor to his wondrous new book. There's dice worker placement, resource management and set collection, but Encyclopedia sees these old mechanisms feeling very novel and fresh.
Encyclopedia is played over 6 rounds, and at the beginning of each round you're going to flip over a little token which will provide a nice bonus to everyone for that round. Touch we really enjoy. Then each player is going to draw 4 dice from this pack, and then you're going to roll them, and this will provide your dice pool for the round. Once you've rolled them, you're going to place them on your player board like so, and you're going to do this because one of the twists is that anyone can use anyone else's dice for their action during the round. So if you have dice that you know your opponents want or that you don't want them to use, you're going to assign them to spaces that will provide rewards if your opponents do take them. So at least you're getting something. Now, once you've done that, each player will take a turn using 1 die to take an action, and you'll go around the table till all the dice are gone. Now, the value and the color of the dice does matter most of the time, but not always, and they won't always both matter at once. The value is usually, like dice, a higher value is better. And the colors are more related to different continents in play that you'll visit. So if you want to go to Europe or do something relating to Europe, you'll want to use a blue die.
Action spaces include taking a visit to the embassy, where you can take expedition tokens, which you can either spend to add 2 value to your dice or spend 1 to change the color of a dice. You can visit the university to hire an expert, which are small cards which will give you some bonuses. You can go to the bank to get some money and the first player token. And you can go to the academy to take an animal card to study. And then the last 2 actions are at the core of getting points. Expeditions will have you visiting a specific continent so that you can research the animal cards in front of you and place cubes on them. Then once you're ready, you can publish your research. Here, you'll pick a reference animal and publish the research on its traits, turning those cubes you've previously placed onto that animal into victory points. So you're going to be collecting points throughout the game, as going on expeditions and publishing your research will get you points, but you're going to get even more at the end of the game from set collection. The more cards you have of a specific continent and the more cubes you've published on a specific trait, the more points you're going to get in an exponential manner. The game will end after the 6th round, and the player with the most victory points is the winner.
As we said, we played this once and just felt that we'd seen it all before. weren't particularly enthralled by it. Then a couple of months later, we found ourselves playing it back to back, and we thoroughly enjoyed the experience. And we realized that while yes, a lot of what's here is familiar, there isn't, if you take the overall experience, another game that we could quite point to that is like. And it takes these mechanisms which are very familiar, they're in a billion other games, and it just made them feel interesting and a little bit fresh. Starting with what you could call the core of the game, the dice worker placement. It's excellent. We really enjoy the twist that you can take dice from any player around the table, because first, it opens up your options, and second of all, it's fun to guard your dice by putting them on these spaces that give you rewards, knowing that you're going to get something if somebody else takes your dice, or sometimes hoping they will if that dice is useless to you. And it also negates a common issue in dice worker placement games, that you're very dependent on what you roll or what you draw from the bag in this case. But the more players you have, the more options you have, because you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of options available to you.
The colours of the dice refer to the different continents and will often require you to match the colour to when you visit a continent, when you take an animal card, and when you pick a reference animal to publish from. Thus, with this system of numbers and colours, you have a far wider use for your dice. It's a thoroughly engaging puzzle to figure out how to use your dice to do the actions that you want to do. And it's also a really nice touch that you can use useless dice to still do helpful actions.
Importantly, this is a fun puzzle, not a grueling one. Encyclopedia is a game about doing a lot of things and doing it the way you want to do it. And it manages this through all of its manipulation systems, such as taking dice from other people, the expedition tokens, and the coins. And what this means is that you're never left feeling frustrated because you can't do something, because often all of these options will be available to you. It actually means you end up feeling a little bit clever because you figure out a way to get what you want.
These combine in a particularly interesting way when it comes to expeditions, because each cube that you place on an animal card will cost a certain value, with the dice that you send to do that action being the base value. Money and expedition tokens can then increase the value of the dice past 6, and often you will want to be doing this if you want to research multiple animals or their level 4 traits. And this is because Encyclopedia is also an efficiency puzzle, because you only have a limited amount of dice and rounds. You don't want to be going on these small expeditions and only researching one animal trait on one animal at a time. Therefore, resource management is also key so that you can set yourself up to have these big turns.
What's particularly fun about Encyclopedia is that many actions will provide you with bonuses if you meet set requirements. And this means that there's another level of strategy going on where you want to weave in and out of the actions, maximizing them as much as possible. For example, if you use the same color die to take an expert as the expert card you take, then you're going to get an expedition token. If you use a high value dice to take an animal card, you're going to get to move up the little bonus track on your player board even more, providing you with a lot of great bonuses. And it basically means that comboing all of this stuff together and seeing it succeed and get the most out of your turns just becomes a really rewarding experience.
And just touching on the experts, they're also a really lovely addition to gameplay. Some of them will give you ongoing bonuses, whereas others are one time. For example, giving you extra dice value for a specific continent or a one-time cash injection. There's also a pretty interesting dilemma because there's only 4 expert spaces. You can hold as many as you want because they count towards continent set collection at the end of the game, but only the 4 that are on top of the stack activate their powers. So it's really tricky to decide which ones you want to keep on top and which ones you maybe no longer need, as they all have pretty interesting powers that you might want to keep in play. Encyclopedia also offers different ways to play, since you can score for set collection, for studying and for publishing. Do you just go for endgame scoring by getting 12 research cubes on a specific trait category? Or do you go for in-game scoring by studying a lot of level 4 animal traits and getting big points now? It keeps each game really interesting, and navigating which animals to take versus study versus publish is a really engaging puzzle. Because once you publish research on an animal, it's lost from your active card area, and any research on the animal that didn't match the reference animal is then lost. So you really have to align your trait categories with your reference animal and what you publish.
While there wasn't anything we personally didn't like, you should know that this is a Euro with randomness, and that will certainly rub people up the wrong way. If you decide to go in for birds in the first round, because there's a few bird cards available, and then none come up till round 5, you're going to feel really annoyed watching the person who went for reptiles get reptile cards round after round after round. And a big issue is that with the experts and the animal cards, ones can come up that will be perfect for a player, and the equivalent for another player might never come up because there's so many cards in both types in the game. And because there's no manipulation, there's what you get for the round, and that's what you get. You can't draw randomly, you can't kind of clear the market, you have to wait for the end of that round. So this is the one area where that manipulation kind of falls short because you're stuck with it. And you could argue that the game is to work with what you're given, but obviously some people are going to get luckier than others, and people are going to come away from this feeling very hard done by, and I think they'll feel that fairly.
Before we get into our final thoughts, we'd just like to note that we have the deluxe Kickstarter version here. So a lot of the lovely tokens that we have will just be standard cardboard ones in the base game. We'd also like to note that the mini expansion, Magna Itinera, is also pretty good and we think worth obtaining and adding in. It just adds to the decision space without adding to the complexity. You now have events, so something will alter every round, new experts, and mythical creatures. The mythical creatures have powerful and expensive abilities, so they're really fun to incorporate into your strategy. It all just adds to a fuller experience. So, final thoughts. If you're looking for a fast-paced, fun, engaging Euro experience, then look no further than Encyclopedia. For us, this one was a real surprise and a real delight. It's got clever mechanisms, a solid dice worker placement, strategic depth, and puzzly gameplay.
But it might not be for everyone. The amount of randomness here might leave people coming out of it feeling sour, so be aware of that. But if you've liked what we've said in this video, we can't recommend it enough. And I mean, it's got a beautiful production. What more do you want? So that was our review of Encyclopedia. Feel free to ask us any questions. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It would really mean a lot to us. Helps to grow the channel. But we also really appreciate you watching.
Yep.
So most of all, thanks for that. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.